Hello, this is Margarita Monet from Edge of Paradise, and you are listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast, where we delve deep into the albums and bands that shape metal. Please visit us on our website at www.themetalpit.org, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Metal Pit, and on YouTube at The Metal Pit 666. And if you want to email us at podcast@themetalpit.org, and you can make any comments or maybe album suggestions or questions on why would we say this about that or whatever. I am your host, Blake, and I run the Metal Pit website. And today, two of my guests are two of my writers, and they've been on at least 3 episodes before. I have Jim and Kenneth. How are you guys today?
Awesome. Good, sir. Yeah, we're all good.
Good. And yes. And so since you've both been on a few episodes, like I just said, we're just going to get right to it. Cool. And now the band we're going to talk about, we have already did 3 of their albums, episodes 3 of their albums. And this one, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest metal band in history, of course, is Metallica. And we've already discussed Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and then Justice for All. So we thought, well, we better go back and do the first one, which started it all. So we're going to talk about Kill'Em All. Released on July 25th, 1983 on Megaforce Records. We just passed a couple of weeks ago the 40th anniversary of this album, which is hard to believe. This is arguably the first thrash metal album ever. At least I would say that. Yep. And it really changed metal and the way, all the thrash metal that came after it. That same year, I would say there was only 2 other thrash albums that year. We had Slayer's debut, Show No Mercy, and Canada's Exciter with their debut album, Heavy Metal Maniac. And I have an example of how these albums and bands influenced many other bands. And I was actually just watching a Cannibal Corpse documentary of the death metal band Cannibal Corpse. And they were saying what bands they were listening to. And they mentioned those 3 bands, Metallica, Slayer, and Exciter. So obviously that's where they went. They just went for a different kind of singing, obviously, than you have with these thrash metal bands. Because I guess kind of that's what death metal is, right? Thrash metal, but with guttural vocals instead. More or less. I mean, the lyrics, of course, too. But anyway, so back to Kill'Em All. Originally, they were going to name the album Metal Up Your Ass, but were convinced to not call it that because they didn't think that would sell so well. Well, maybe they didn't know it would sell so well anyway, because they did change everything. So on this album, we got the vocals, then guitar, of course, James Hetfield, lead guitar of Kirk Hammett, bass of Cliff Burton, who of course passed away, and drummer Lars Ulrich. And let's see, before the recording of this album, Dave Mustaine, of course, who is now in Megadeth and left to be in Megadeth after he was fired for whatever, drugs, alcohol, I guess, is the main reasons they say. But he does have writing credits on 4 of the songs on this album. There is so much more I could say as a bio about this, but everybody knows who Metallica is, so we're just going to talk about it. But first, I'm going to ask Ken. Neither one of you, I've been on every podcast about Metallica, well, almost every podcast that we've done. But so we're going to find out how you first either heard Metallica or heard the Kill'Em All album. So Ken, I'll let you go first.
Well, for me, it was actually after I heard Ride the Lightning. Then I went back to hear the first album. So Ride was first, and then I heard so much about Kill'Em All. So eventually I got a copy of that, going back, like I'm dating myself. So yeah, a cassette copy way back when. So when I bought that album, that kind of, it blew me away. The cover is what really got me on that album. I love the hammer. And I know that hammer is basically something that Cliff had. Cliff, apparently the rumor was he used to carry a hammer around back in the day. Don't know why. He carried the hammer around. So on the back cover of that album, basically what they did was he didn't demand, but he asked if he could use the hammer as the photo on the back cover. So the back cover has his hammer as well, from what I understand. And he did also name the album as well. So Cliff pretty much said, "Oh well, kill them all, these bastards who don't understand us," and it stuck. And apparently they went with that title. But that was, my introduction to the band was right after Ride the Lightning.
And Jim, for you?
Same, pretty much almost the same story. I mean, I was only 12 when this came out, but going back, I mean, I picked up Ride the Lightning, but I got this right around the same time. I got it actually at, believe it or not, Woolco. If you remember Woolco, in Canada, you remember Woolco. Anyways, they had a bargain bin of cassettes, and this one was in there, but it wasn't on sale. And I was like, oh, geez, the old Bonsai Records copy. I still have my OG cassette. I bought it, and it just like Kenneth said, it blew me away. I mean, this album, I like the Metallica albums up to the Black Album. The Black Album, I kind of changed a little bit just due to, when they went a lot of mainstream there. And I know we don't want to get into that. We're talking about this one, but, the first 4 albums are amazing. But this is my favorite Metallica album. It's my favorite all-time album. And it's just, I think half of it is the actual rawness and how fresh and new, thrash metal essentially was. And this just grabbed a hold of me, and I gravitated towards it. And, and on the other half is just probably a little bit of reminiscing over the fact that I picked this up. I loved it since I, got to go through the whole, just like you guys, the whole Metallica experience, as a 12, 13-year-old, and then as I grew up. So, I mean, it means that much to me. And it's a killer album. A lot of people say, it's kind of, it's their first one. It's kind of maybe a little bit childish in a way, in the sense that it's, some of the songs and that, but hey, I collect Star Wars figures. I have a vintage Star Wars collection, a whole room full of Star Wars stuff. I still buy CDs by the truckload. You can't get anybody more childish than me as a 52-year-old. So this is right up my alley. So there you go. But that's me breaking into it. So, and I absolutely love it.
Now, see, it'll be a little different, like, because you guys heard Ride the Lightning first. Now, did you hear any other thrash albums besides Ride the Lightning? Did you listen to, I don't know, Slayer or whatever before you listened to Kill 'Em All? Or
no, it was Metallica first for me.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think Haunting the Chapel was probably the first Slayer tape I got, which was the little EP with some live tracks on it. And then I obviously went back and got their first album, but and Exciter as well, probably their second or third album, and then went back and got it. But yeah, this would be the first thrash, my first thrash album for sure.
Okay, well, for me, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I've already talked about this probably on the other 3 podcasts. But for me, I'm a few years older than you guys. So I was 17 when this came out, and I was listening to Q107 radio station in Toronto, and they played a heavy metal show Friday night or Saturday night at like midnight or something like that. Yeah. And the DJ played Hit the Lights on there. And that was the first time I heard this album or Metallica was then. So it would have been I can't remember like if the album was out, or I guess it must have been, because that wasn't a single that they released from the album. So it must have already been out, but I just never heard anything about it until she played Hit the Lights on this radio station. And she predicted that Metallica would be huge in 5 years, when she was pretty close. I mean, they were huge in 5 years, but they were huger later.
Yeah.
But so I've been listening to it since this album. So it's a little different for me, because I don't know what I'd be like if I would have heard, because Ride the Lightning is like my favorite Metallica album. So I don't know what it'd be like if I would have heard Ride the Lightning first and then went back to Kill 'Em All. I don't know. But since I heard Kill 'Em All first, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to start talking about the album. And I do this thing where I go to that live set list thing. And so I do have that information here. even though Metallica is kind of different than a lot of bands because they always mix up their songs and stuff. So there's not, because some groups there'll be a song, like I just did an Arch Enemy one where they only played one song twice. But Metallica usually plays everything sometime, somewhere. So there's nothing like that. So we're gonna start with Hit the Lights, which I'll just say has been played 228 times live. And also this is the fourth highest album they have where they play songs live. I think the Black Album is probably first. And then you got Ride Lightning and Master of Puppets is probably next, I believe, if I read that right. I lost my notes. But anyway, Ken, what do you think of Hit the Lights?
Well, any song that starts out with "No Life Till Leather," what does that have to tell you? Like, right after that, he gets it right. But obviously, that's like the reference to Leather Charm. So, of course, the song's pretty strong right from the get go with the scream, the fade in with the guitars, and then it just rocks. It just doesn't stop. It doesn't let up, and it's a good song. I like that song quite a bit as an opener for me.
And Jim?
Oh, I mean, this is I'm gonna, be gushing the whole time. So, I love this album. And you know what? And you said it about, not that I'm disliking at all Ride the Lightning or Massive. Those are perfect Thrash albums too. It's just, there's something about this album. I think it's just the innocent rawness, I would say, that really kind of brings this album. And it's just, these guys came out of nowhere with this. And I think it's great. But Hit the Lights, awesome song. As Kenneth said, it's a partially a Leather Charm song. The band Hetfield was in before, he brought this to Lars kind of, I think, 3/4 done. And, this song went on the Metal Massacre 1 compilation, would have been cassette or album back in the day. And I had a friend who used to go for summers down in Florida, and he picked it up at a you couldn't get that here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He picked up a tape of it, and we ended up all making copies of it because it was awesome. And this was on there, as well as like even Rats song from their EP was on there as well, which was kind of shocking because it was a much harder, heavier song than what they ended up putting out later on. But I mean, I agree with Kenneth. This is awesome. The first line says it all, and I mean, it just the fade in distorted guitars, just it sounds amazing, and it just gets this gets you going for the whole album, starting off on the right foot as far as I'm concerned.
Well, then actually that No Life Till Leather also was the name. They had an EP or a demo, I guess you call it, out before this, and it was called No Life Till Leather. So I don't know if that Hit the Lights was on that, as you said. I don't know if they just added, I guess that's where they got the name for their demo.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like the song too, of course. Like I said, it's the first song I ever heard by them. And I was thinking it doesn't help that you guys heard Ride the Lightning first, but it'd be fun if we could go back to 1983 and review this album right after it came out, because it was so different than everything else we had before that. So it would be really interesting if we could review it then, because now we are going to compare it to like Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets or Justice or whatever, or the new stuff. And if people started listening to Metallica when they heard the Black Album, they might hate this stuff because it's faster, right, than what you get on the Black Album or Load and Reload or whatever. But we're 40 years too late. Okay, so then we go to the Four Horsemen, and I'll just ask Jim first to speak about the Four Horsemen.
This is a wicked song. It's this one must have been done quite a bit live, probably almost every one of their shows, I would say. I mean, it must be high up there on your list.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, but yes, I mean, Mustaine, I'm not sure, did he write the whole song or did he just write the guitar parts for it? Because yes, Mechanics, I believe, was a song that was originally written by Mustaine about having, I think, sex in a gas station. So... Yeah. And it sounds, when you listen to Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, Mechanics, I mean, they sound fairly close. And but I mean, it's an awesome song. One of my favorite Metallica songs of all time, probably. My God, if I had to do a top 10, a lot of them would be. I think I did do one of your top 10 on Ride the Lightning. I ended up writing it anyways on our website there, and I was like, and I think you even commented and said, geez, you got half of Kill 'Em All songs on there. So yeah, no, it's an amazing song. And and it's just awesome. And I think they redid the lyrics to fit. But yeah, that's one of the songs, obviously, that Dave Mustaine gets credit for. And I believe they wanted to change a lot of the guitar parts on this whole album when Kirk came in, but they kind of just had him do a lot of the original guitar parts pretty much to where it was written originally, I believe.
Yeah.
Ken?
Yeah, this I know this is the one song that James didn't like the original lyrics, because I know, again, it was about sex or something with a ex-girlfriend. I remember reading that. Dave had this idea about more about sex. So James went in and decided to add the Four Horsemen part, which was brilliant in my mind, and it just gave the complexity of the song a whole different meaning than what it had. I wonder what that original song would have sounded like if they stuck with Mustaine's lyrics. But the song is also a really good song. James has his amazing raw voice, and those shrieks that he has in this album are awesome. Yeah, this song has a lot of bite. It has a lot of bite.
Yeah.
And this was a 7-minute song, which was a little bit, well, I guess it wasn't that odd for Metallica, of course, but it was, I guess, strange for most bands. But it's been played 576 times live. It's the third most played on this album. So there's 2 other songs that were played more live. There was something else I was going to say. I don't remember now. Doesn't matter. Four Horsemen. Yeah, I liked you mentioned the title, and yeah, it kind of fits the band since there's 4 of them, exactly. And there they are. They're 4 horsemen riding into the heavy metal world with this album. Then we go to Motor Breath. This has been played 333 times live, and this is just a short one. It's only 3 minutes long. And I'll just say a little about this song first. Now, hopefully I don't steal your thing, but I was always amazed when I first heard this. I mean, I can't remember. I know I have a guitar. I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I had a guitar when this came out, but I was always amazed at Kirk's solos and how fast they were. And it made me think, I guess I can't play the guitar after all. But this song, it has a really cool solo, but it's really short because it's only a 3 minute song. So it's a really short solo, but it's still awesome. And like all of them are awesome to me anyway. And Ken, what do you think of Motor Breath?
Yeah, I like this song a lot. I mean, basically, again, James dips back into Leather Charm because the song is more or less about life on the road when he was in the band. And I know the one thing about this song that really is interesting is that it forced Cliff to do a lot of fast picking because the tempo and the rhythm was just driving. So he had to really up his game as the bassist on the song. But you're right, it's 3 minutes long, and it doesn't need to be any longer than that. And it's sharp, it's strong, and it's going to kick your ass, pretty much.
Totally.
And Jim, anything to add about it?
Oh man, I mean, this is an underrated song on the album. I think it's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's wicked. Again, Kenneth said it, with that fast speed picking from Cliff. I mean, he had to just put it into overdrive, and those Ulrich's drum rolls in it too are really, really recognizable and cool. And I think it was just so neat. And the chorus, the riff that accompanies it is just so awesome. Kirk really, really brings his speed with it. It's a fast song, and I absolutely love it. A little story, I had a tape of it, and I remember I went to, I would have been a junior high dance, and I don't know what I traded, some cigarettes or something to the DJ to play it. And he ended up playing it at the school dance. It was pretty cool. And, a lot of the people there a lot of the other fellow students and friends didn't even know what it was. But and he had programmed the lights to the beat. And I mean, back then everything was, done fairly manually, but it was so cool. And it just shredded the whole dance. It was awesome.
Well, lucky for them, it's the shortest song on the album.
And the funny thing on the second song, so I had this mixtape and I had put that on there. The second song was the ballad from Helix, which was Make Me Do Anything You Want. And he let it play through. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I don't know. I must have been, I'm a sensitive guy. So I throw Motor Breath on there and then a nice ballad for the ladies. So, what can I say?
Oh, another thing I did want to mention about the Four Horsemen, I have to go back again, but I was on Wikipedia and I was just looking up some stuff and it had a link to the Four Horsemen. So I clicked on it and it goes to a page about Megadeth's mechanics. So I don't know if Dave Mustaine made up this Wikipedia page or what, but it was weird.
Wow.
Because I always thought I was going to read something interesting about the Four Horsemen, but instead I was reading about Megadeth's mechanics song.
Oh, that's so bizarre.
Okay, then we go to Jump in the Fire, which probably would have been a better song for your high school dance, I would think, than Motor Breath, but it's a little longer. I'll let you. I want to see what you guys say about it first. Jim, it's your turn, I believe.
Another great song. I mean, I think this was the first or second single. There was 2 singles that were released off this.
Yes, second.
This is the second one.
It's the second, yeah. And I have the 12-inch single for it, so it's really cool. I mean, I love the the devil on the front of it, the demon. It's wicked. I mean, that's it's just so cool. And I believe this was written again by Mustaine about. I think it was about sex again originally, and then Hetfield revised the lyrics again in order to kind of do it from the song from Satan's point of view. And it doesn't have anything to do with sex. So I again, like you guys, it would be interesting to hear the original, like what the heck, this was sounding like, or what the actual, first set of lyrics were. I'm not even familiar with them, but it's one of it's a top song on the album for me as well.
And Ken?
Yeah, Jim pretty much said it all. I mean, basically it's a teen. From what I understand, Dave wanted to write about teen sex experiences, and James didn't. James didn't like that. So obviously, you could tell, even at that time before they kicked him out, that the two of them weren't really jiving on the lyrics. And and I can get that. I can get by that. And I actually prefer the whole idea of the demon, the Satan's point of view, watching souls that he's going to see down the road burn in hell, or he's going to meet them down the road. That's a great idea for a song. But teen sex, like, okay, it might work, but not in this context.
I don't think Metallica really has songs about sex, do they?
No,
really?
Not at all. It's not their style.
No.
It's not their style.
Actually,
they left that for Motley Crue.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Or AC/DC, maybe.
Yeah.
When I listen to this today, even though I've listened to the album thousands of times, but just to do a refresher again today, I'm listening to it, and the song makes me think of Deep Purple's Space Truckin'. I don't know if anybody else ever gets that, because even in the chorus, he goes, the chorus is, where is the chorus? Oh, come on, jump in the fire. And Deep Purple is, come on, let's go space trucking. I don't know. It just and of course, obviously Metallica is heavier and faster than Deep Purple, but it was just a feeling. I'm sure that Deep Purple influenced Metallica too at one point. And I don't know, just to me, it kind of reminds me of space trucking a little bit.
I could see that. I could actually see that.
Yeah.
Then we go to, that was played 98 times live. Just might as well say it. I got it wrote down. And the instrumental we got mostly from Cliff Burton, I guess, anyway. Anesthesia, in brackets, Pulling Teeth. This has been played 136 times live. I'm not sure if that was all when Cliff was in the band or if they ever played it, because I didn't look that deep into it. I'm not sure if they would have let another bass player play that or not, but anyway, I do think it's a great lead into Whiplash, because it's kind of slow and heavy and has all that weird kind of stuff in it that Cliff wanted to do.
Yeah.
Cliff being Cliff or whatever. But Kenneth, what do you think of the instrumental?
Well, this is the one solo that actually they heard it. They heard him play this in, I think, a previous band that he was in. and they loved that solo. They were smitten by it. And what they liked about the song was the fact that it's a bass, but he's playing a lead, and that blew them away. Plus, he had his wah-wah pedal going. He had heavy distortion going. He had the tapping. He had all of that in the song. So they were really smitten by that, and they wanted him to play that. And I think that's why it's been played so much, for that reason. It's a cool bass song, really.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, Kenneth hit it all. I mean, they saw he was playing for Trauma, and they at first didn't even realize it was a bass. They were like, "That's a bass."
That's
like,
right. That's right.
Then he's got to get it. We got to get, he's got to get into Metallica. So I mean, that it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's wicked, and I think with Lars's drums in there, and it is a great segue into the next song, which is phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, could you imagine them going to a club? Anybody seeing Cliff up there just pounding away and the wah-wah pedal with the bass, and you're sitting there going, he's making that sound with a bass. I mean, that's just shows the talent there for sure.
Yeah.
I think when I first heard it, I probably didn't even think it was a song. I just thought, what is this kind of just weird noises or whatever? But but then as with Ride, and then the next 3 albums, I guess they had longer instrumentals, but they were all inspired by Cliff, especially the 2 that he played on, of course. I mean, but even the one on Injustice for All, you could tell they kind of did that as a homage to Cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, then we go to Whiplash, which is, I'll mention on the Ride the Lightning podcast episode I did it with Kim, one of our writers, Kim, and photographers, I guess we'll say. And we did our top 10 list then we did the top 10 Metallica songs of all time. And we both had Whiplash as our number 1 Metallica song of all time, which I thought was pretty cool that we matched on there. And so, Kenneth, how do you like Whiplash?
Well, it's arguably one of the better songs on the album, for sure. And it's a crowd pleaser. They played that a lot back in the day. But it's a basic song about headbanging. That's all they need. And it just, again, it just rips. It doesn't let up. And that's I love that song. It's for me, it's probably one of the better songs on the album in my mind.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the anthemic. This is what thrash metal is all about, banging your head against the stage, make it bleed, make it ring, make it really sore. Yeah, it says it all. I mean, it's basic, but I think that's the beauty of it, and that's the expertise in this. And as being a bit of a disgruntled Metallica fan in the future, I really, and I know everybody argues that they'll never go back to this, and I know that, but this is sort of the innocence end of it, the essence of Metallica on these first 4. You can even include the 5th album a bit, where they're missing that, I think, in today's releases. And it's so basic, it's genius, and it's how basic it is.
Well, they probably can't play that fast anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
But Jim, when you think that this song is also, because I've heard people say that this is a song that pretty much kicked off thrash metal. A lot of people say that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've read that several times.
Yeah, this is the anthem. This is thrash metal. Absolutely agree with it 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you would.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my favorite. Well, as I already said, it's my favorite Metallica song of all time. But yeah, I always love hearing this song. And I will mention Motorhead won a Grammy Award in 2005 for their version of this song, which I don't even know if I've ever heard before myself. No, I just read this, and I hate the Grammy Awards anyway, so I don't really care. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that, Motorhead should have won a Grammy for their own songs.
Yeah.
Not for a Metallica song, but anyway, it's kind of weird. And one thing I did like was when Jason Newsted joined the band and they would play the song live, they would let Jason sing some of the lyrics. And I always thought that was cool, because I thought it's kind of the band saying to the fans that we're accepting him as the bass player. So please accept him too, because here he is singing one of our classic songs. Of course, maybe they didn't really accept him later on, but anyway, they did back then.
Yeah.
And then we go to that was played. It's almost played 1,000 times live. It's the second most played live on this album. You could probably guess what the first one will be if you've seen them live anyway. But anyway, we'll go to side 2 if you have vinyl, which I did, to Phantom Lord, which has been played 172 times. I mentioned vinyl. I have stuff written down about this. Since on side 2 we got Phantom Lord, No Remorse, Seek and Destroy, Metal Militia. I feel it's like one of the best sides of a metal album in the history or whatever, because I love every song that's on this side, and it's just something I noticed because of course of my vinyl days when you would because you couldn't just skip a song like you can on Spotify or whatever the hell you're listening to it on, or even on CD for that matter. So anyway, Kenneth, what do you think of Phantom Lord?
This is a good song as well. Again, from my understanding, I believe the original origins that Dave actually wrote or some of the lyrics. And again, James came in and like, no, we're going to change it. And the Phantom Lord about the devil, basically the song is about the devil. And it's like, it's another great song. I love this song. You're right, Blake. It's really strong. And just the way that James sings that song, wow, it's like with such presence and force and just malicious intent. It's a great song from start to finish. I love this song.
Yeah, it's got what's cool about it too. It starts off the second side from the vinyl days in just another assault. I mean, it's amazing, and it starts off with that ominous start. So it's almost kind of like putting a bit of a horror theme to a song, and it's called Phantom Lord. It sounds like, kind of reminds me of maybe something like John Carpenter from like maybe Halloween movies or something like that. That has that kind of droney bass kind of slag start to it, and I think it's pretty cool, and it just lights up. And I agree with Kenneth. I mean, James's vocals are just phenomenal in this. And yeah, apparently Mustaine had written like you said, had written most of it, and they changed it around, but he's credited, I think, with the central riff in the song, and they didn't change that. So but it's a great song. I love that song as well.
Yeah.
And again, I love the guitar solos, of course, but these were really fast. I found on this song too. I mean, they're fast on every song, I guess, but whatever. And then we got No Remorse, and I'll just let Jim go with No Remorse.
Oh, I mean, another great song. This is, I think, the third longest song on the album. It's just over 6 minutes, and I mean, it's got like that mid-tempo sound to it. And then it just accelerates towards the end of it. I mean, it's a song about, no remorse during battle, during a fight. So, and I mean, it's just phenomenal. I love it. It's one of my favorite ones. I always thought maybe it was a nod to Motorhead because they were such big Motorhead fans. But, another great song, and it fits perfectly. That second side, like you said, Blake, is one of the best sides in thrash and maybe even metal, and that just fits right in as song number 2 on that side. So I absolutely love it.
And Ken?
Yeah, pretty much. Jim said it all. It's a mid-tempo song that's pretty strong. It's actually not one of my favorite songs on the album. I don't mind it. But yeah, it's 7 minutes. You can't go wrong with any of these songs that Metallica did it at this point in their career. So
I like the long songs. Like I like 6 minute songs, 7 minute songs, or whatever. I prefer that myself. Because I did with Jim, we did Slayer's Rain and Blood, where everybody loves that one, but I just wasn't too pleased with 1 minute and 40-second songs and stuff. But they were fast, but whatever. But we're not talking about Slayer. I do like that No Remorse, sorry. Started with like a killer lead instead of just the way they start most of the songs. So that was a little different for this one. And that has been played 250 times live. And the song that has been played the most live from this album, of course, is Seek and Destroy, probably just so the crowd can sing along with it because it's easy. They only have to remember 3 words. But of course, if the live shit Binge and Purge live album, their first live album, of course, that was the big one on that one. And And I'm sure they still do that today when they play it. But it's still a great song too, even without that stuff. It's still a great song, and I guess this is my third favorite track on the album after Whiplash and Hit the Lights, which I like a little better. Jam, what do you think of Seek? Oh, yeah, well, Jam, you go. I did it wrong.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, it's a crowd pleaser for sure. I love the song. I mean, I love the whole album, and you know, the interesting thing about this album with so many great songs, this album didn't go platinum until I think like 1986. So you know, when you think about it, this has been out for 3 years, and you know, it didn't. You know, it finally, and then it got re-released, I think in 88, where they added the 2 bonus tracks of the Diamond Head songs. But, you know, and this one flew right into there. I mean, if this was released, can you imagine this was released at the end of the 80s, like right when thrash metal was just flying. You know, this I mean, it sold so great anyways. And yes, they released 2 other albums from them. This would have just gone absolutely crazy. And I mean, it eventually did. But this song is wicked. I mean, it's I believe Hetfield wrote this. It's inspired by Diamond Head's song Dead Reckoning. Yeah, and I think he wrote it like in his truck at work, maybe I think on his lunch break or something. So it's kind of neat for sure. And I mean, it has a great simple chorus, and you know, everybody who's a Metallica fan or even the casual listeners probably know this song, you know at least the chorus of the song, can go to a concert and just, you know, sing along to it for sure.
Ken?
Yeah, I was just going to add to Jim what you were saying, that I think the touring, because they toured so much and played this record to death, I think that's the reason why it went platinum later on, not at the start, because they pretty much played every song on this album on every tour. They never deviated from the course on the first album. But the one thing you said, like, I thought was kind of funny was that the live Binge and Purge. I always got a kick out of that song when they play it live, because I think they're in Mexico.
Yes,
I believe, and you're hearing like James is like just pulls out the mic and just shoves it in someone's face, and I was laughing my ass off. It's so funny just hearing people say "Seek and Destroy" over and over, but it just shows you how the song resonates with people, like especially fans during the show. For me, anyways. So I think that's what makes the song so great, is that they got the crowd involved into it, and and it's such a great crowd pleaser.
Yes, and that was cool. And when they had the Mexican fans, and you know, some of them trying to sing, because it came with VHS tapes, but I don't think it came with the video from Mexico, did it? I forget.
No,
So it came with a video from Seattle, and then there was another one I can't remember, but I'm not sure if they had that on tape where you actually seen these people doing it. But yeah, that was a cool thing on that. And I will talk after we talk about Metal Militia. I will talk about the chart thing that you just kind of mentioned there, Jim. But anyway, we'll go to Metal Militia, which this is the song they've played the least from this album. I'm not sure why. I like the song. Like, I don't know. It's just another heavy metal anthem kind of song or whatever. But yeah, they've only played this one 95 times live, so it's the one they've played the least. But Ken, what do you think of Metal Militia?
Well, it's kind of funny because this is probably the fastest song on the album for them.
Yeah.
It's the fastest song, and it's got that like marching draw, like the soldiers marching, which at the beginning, which I love that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's their fastest song, but they don't play it that much, which is kind of funny in the long run. But I dig the song. I like the song as well. I think it's a good closer.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, totally. Another underrated gem off this album. I mean, it's so fast. And again, Mustaine, I think, wrote the main riff to this one as well. And but it's so cool. I mean, the song's about metal life, and it's just, I mean, marching as a group. I love this song. And yeah, like Kenneth said, it's a great way to end off such a great album. And boy, by the time you're done listening to this, you're physically tired. So I mean, you know, it just finishes you off in perfect metal form. So, and you know, as we were talking about this, one thought came over me as I got the album in front of me here. I'm like, there's so many anthemic, you know, massive thrash songs on this with, Seek and Destroy, with the Four Horsemen, with Whiplash. These are just anthemic. I mean, they just drive that, and this was pretty much the start of the thrash movement, and I don't think you could get an even better album than this to really push this through with those. I mean, it just those anthemic songs are just phenomenal.
So you're giving it a 10, I'm taking?
Oh, yes. This is my favorite album of all time. It is a 10 out of 10 from me, for sure.
And Ken, what would you rate it at a 10?
10. You can't. There's no other rating. It's 10. That's all I can say. For what it is, dude. I mean, come on. Like, this is the thrash engine. As far as I'm concerned, this album is the thrash engine. It started thrash to me. Absolutely. So, it's the album that pretty much, inspired like a decade of thrash metal. So yeah, a 10.
Well, I have it wrote down as a 9, probably because, I like Ride the Lightning better. So I guess I'm thinking, well, I can't give everyone a 10. I guess I could, but
yeah, sure.
But whatever. Still, sure. Yeah, it's really good. Here, I'll just talk about, I'll ask about live. Now, again, like I said, I've been on a few podcasts, so I've probably talked about it, but you guys haven't talked about Metallica. So, Ken, have you seen Metallica live before? Lots of times. When was the first time? Whatever.
Oh, hell, I've seen them so many times. Yeah, the first time I actually saw them live was when they did Justice, of course. They played Maple Leaf Gardens. I was there when Queensryche opened up. I was actually on the floors, which was insane. I couldn't hear the next day. I went with a bunch of buddies, and on the Saturday we hung out, and it's like I can't. My ears didn't stop ringing because it was straight on the floors. And yeah, I was like 6 rows back on the floors. So it was an incredible night for me to watch them play that show live, and then watch the whole Lady of Justice fall apart, crash on the stage. It's like, wow, what a show. But I've seen them like 6-7 times already, and you never go wrong on a Metallica show. Never ever.
No. And Jim?
I've seen them 3 times. I mean, we get a lot of limited shows here in the Americas, but I gotta hand it to Metallica. First show, same as Kenneth. Saw them with the Injustice tour with Queensryche opening, and it just blew me away. I mean, was a mega fan then, and I have that on YouTube. You can actually get the Halifax concert on there, so it's really, really cool. And it was awesome. I saw them again in 93, I think early 93 would have been the Black album. I think we were on the back end of that 2.5-year tour, and it was cool. They didn't have an opening band then. They did sort of a little movie of about 10 minutes where they traveled around the city and showed pictures of that. That was kind of cool too. And then I saw them in 2011. It was I think it was 6 bands. I saw them with Coheed and Cambria and a few other bands we had an outdoor concert on Citadel Hill, which is an old fort in Halifax, but they use one side of the hill where they can bring in like 30,000 people. So it was pretty neat. It was really cool. So I've seen them the 3 times, and no, like Kenneth said, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with a Metallica show. I mean, they put everything into it. It is a great show, and seeing the clips of the 2 nights they're doing, which is just absolutely marketing genius in all the big cities around the globe. And I know they're coming to Montreal and Toronto, and that the no repeat concert with their different opening bands per night. I mean, you go to that, and even if you're not a fan of a lot of the newer stuff, I mean, it's just a great mix, and they do play a lot of their original stuff for sure. So I agree with Kenneth. You can't go wrong with a Metallica show.
And actually, it's not coming to Toronto, or I would be going, but it's not coming to Toronto. It is coming to Montreal, and it played it. I think it's already been in Edmonton. Edmonton and Montreal were the only 2 Canadian stops on this. But yeah, it would be really cool because they played different songs both nights. So you're going to hear. Yeah, I've probably seen them like 10 times. I've kind of lost count probably. But my first one was also on Justice for All tour. And also Jason, our other writer, Jason, that was also his first tour, was also on Justice for All. So I guess that's when we all decided, let's go see Metallica and whatever. But yes, they always put on a good show. Like, I can't remember the last time I seen them. I know there was great big black balloons on stage. So I can't remember exactly. Death Magnetic, maybe that was the tour. I can't even remember exactly. But it's been a few years since I've seen them, and I don't know if I'll get the chance again or not, because they're getting up there, as we know, as we all are.
Well, there should be a second leg of the tour for Toronto.
Yeah.
I can't see them not playing Toronto. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I know, they announced the whole tour because they're going everywhere. But I mean, they can only do certain places because they're doing 2 in every city, and they're taking the night off between the 2 shows, not like they would have did back in the 80s where they would just play every night. They're older, I guess they need some rest. So as far as I know, no, I don't think there is a second leg to this tour, but as far as I know anyway, but anyway, that's just the way they did it. And I did think about going to Montreal to see it, but then I just decided against doing it. It's expensive, of course.
Yes,
absolutely.
But anyway, so I wanted to mention, you mentioned about charts and stuff and how I didn't reach, what was it? Sorry, what did you say again, Jim, about being platinum or gold or something?
I think it went platinum first time. I mean, I think it's gone 4 or 5 times platinum, obviously, but it went in the US, it went 4.5 times. But I think it was 86 when it finally went its first time platinum.
Yeah. Well, on this, there's some charts here. It has the peak position, and it was 1988 was its highest listing in the U.S. Billboard Top 200, and it was number 120th, and that was in 1988, 5 years after it was released. And it has all these other countries listed here, and it peaked. Most of them, it was in the 2000s, like in Finland and France and Sweden. It was 2004 that it peaked at its highest level, and Switzerland was 2008, and Germany is 2016 when it peaked at the highest level. So, as other albums come out, people say, I better go back and buy Kill 'Em All, I guess. But yes, it has gone, 3 times platinum in the United States, and it went platinum in Canada and Australia and Argentina and Poland, and then gold in a couple other countries. And of course, as time goes by, people notice Metallica and they go out and buy it. Okay, so that's the album. Now we get to the hard part of the show. As I guess I didn't mention this early in the podcast, did I? But so we always do a top 10 list, and sometimes it's the top 10 songs of the band, or maybe it's ranking their albums, or maybe it's picking the albums from the year that this was released. So we would have did 1983, but I shouldn't have suggested it, but I did. I suggested we do the top 10 thrash albums from the 1980s. So from 1980 to 1989, but of course, since thrash didn't start till 83, we get to knock off 1980, 81, 82. So it should be easy picking 10 albums out of 7 years. Like, how can that be hard?
It was.
So here we go. We're going to do our top 10 thrash albums of the 1980s. And I guess I'll let Jim go first and start with your number 10.
Well, I mean, it was easier to name my 2 children than to do this. And unfortunately, I probably put a lot more thought into this. But anyhow, number 10, I went with Megadeth, Peace Cells. An awesome album, and I feel bad about putting it in 10, but my favorite Megadeth album was it wasn't released till the 90s, so I'll go with that. And the original Megadeth, the first Megadeth album, was great. The production was kind of a little suspect on it, and then when they redid it, they definitely made it a lot better. But that's my number 10. My number 9, I had to put a tie in the same band just because I couldn't do this, and that is Voivod. And I'm considering them at this point of their career a thrash band, speed metal band, compared to maybe After Nothing Face when they became more of a sci-fi. And then the 2 albums with E-Force, Eric Forrest singing, they went back to their thrash roots, and they're more now of maybe a science fiction prog band. But one of my favorite bands, the tie is with War and Pain, which came out in 86, and Dimension Hatros, which is one of my favorite Voivod albums of all time, in 88. Number 8, I went with Testament, The Legacy. I mean, phenomenal album. And again, these guys, Testament, could be part of the big 5. Easy. That came out in 87. My seventh, I went with a little later of an album with Death Angel, The Ultraviolence. Love Death Angel. Act 3, released in the 90s, was probably a more mature and better album, but this was another album that came out that was just so awesome then. Number 6, Metallica, Master of Puppets. I don't need to say anything there. My third favorite Metallica album, so I'm giving away 2 of my picks. But I mean, it's a perfect thrash album. Number 5, I'm gonna go with Slayer, Rain and Blood. Awesome album as well. That was released in 86. Number 4, I go with Creator, Extreme Aggression. I had trouble because I wanted to put so many of my favorite bands in there, and I just, I kept running out of, because I put a couple of bands in here twice, but this was, there was a couple of pre-Creator albums that are great, like with Pleasure to Kill and that, but this one here I thought was a really great example of a great thrash album. Number 3 is Ride the Lightning, Metallica. Number 2, my favorite Slayer album of all time, South of Heaven. I like it just a little bit. We're talking points of points here. These are all 10s for me. I love that album. And obviously my first one is Kill 'Em All from Metallica. So that's my top 10 in a nutshell.
Okay, Ken, I'll let you go now then.
Alrighty. So kicking off number 10 for me is Violence, Eternal Nightmare.
Nice.
I love the vocals in that album. It's killer stuff. Rob Flynn, all the guys in the band, that's a really, really strong album. Number 9 for me is Destruction's release from Agony. I like this album a lot. It's a bit more mature for them. It's not as crazy as Eternal Devastation. But I like the maturity that they put out in that album. Then I'm going to number 8. I have Testament to Legacy. Again, there's not much to say about that. That's just that's a pure classic, pure thrash band. Number 7, I have Exodus, Bonded by Blood. I know Blake and I just did a podcast on that earlier. Great album. It's pretty strong for the time. Then at number 6, I have Megadeth, Peace Sells. Not much to say about that. It's pretty much, it's a classic. It's starting the thrash genre. Number 5, I do have Death Angel at number 5, The Ultraviolence. I love that album. It's a good. It's one of those albums that's really relentless for like these teenagers, Filipino teenagers, and it's a great album. Number 4, I have Slayer's Rain and Blood. Again, that's just another killer 22 minute or 20 whatever minutes album that you can't go wrong on. I know you're not a fan of that, Blake, but what can I say? Number 3 for me, I have Master of Puppets. I love that album. It's one of my favorite albums for the band. Number 2, it's going to be Anthrax, Among the Living, which is practically my favorite thrash album of all time for me.
Nice.
And of course, number 1, Metallica's Kill 'Em All.
Okay.
Good list, man. I love the fact you had Death Angel. And you know what? And not to interrupt, sorry, but that I'm sitting there arguing over, I got to put a Destruction in there. I got to put a Tankard in there. And it's just hard. Driving it. Again, this was hard.
Very much so. It's very hard.
Well, you can mention your honorable mentions after I do mine, if there's any that haven't been mentioned, I guess, or you can say what's on your list. But okay, so for me, number 10, I got Death Angel, The Ultraviolence. So it was nice to see that you both had Death Angel on there too, because I wasn't sure if you would or not. But yeah, I love that album, and they were just teenagers when they did that one. And Kill As One is one of my favorite songs ever. It's the whiplash of Death Angel. Number 9, I have Slayer, not Rain and Blood, but Show No Mercy, because it's my favorite Slayer album. It's their first album. That's the first album of Slayer I heard, so maybe it's nostalgia reasons that's my favorite Slayer album. Number 8 is Megadeth, Peace Sells. Number 7, I have Kill 'Em All. Mine's a little lower than you had Kill 'Em All at. Number 6, I have Anthrax, Among the Living. Number 5, I have Testament, but I don't have the one that you picked. I have Practice What You Preach from 1980.
Yeah.
I did consider the New Order also, and I guess the Legacy too, even though I don't have that written down. I must have maybe forgot about that one. But but that's their debut, right? But anyway, I really like Practice What You Preach. Number 4, neither one of you mentioned this group, so I'm surprised, I guess, that I have them and you didn't. But I have Overkill with Years of Decay from 1989.
Yeah, that's a good album.
Awesome album.
But those from 4 to 10, I could probably mix them up in different orders every day. But my top 3 are pretty much my top 3. So number 3, I have Exodus, Bonded by Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the top 2, I guess you could probably guess. Number 2 is Master of Puppets, 86. And number 1 is Ride the Lightning, 1984.
There you go.
So that, yes, and that was hard because I'll mention some of my honorable mentions. I had Tankard, Chemical Invasion. I wanted to put that on there because I love that song, Chemical Invasion, but I just didn't think, I don't think the whole album can fit above some of these other ones. And I mentioned Testament, and even had Anthrax, Spreading the Disease. And then I had some Canadian ones. I had Exciters, Heavy Metal Maniac, Violence and Force. I wanted to get on there. Sacrifice, For Determination, Annihilators, Alice in Hell.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That is.
And then I had Slayer, South of Heaven also, and I also had Exodus's Fabulous Disaster, which I also love that album, but I just couldn't get them on there. Any honorable mentions that haven't been mentioned by somebody else?
I had I as well had Annihilator, Alice in Hell. Like, I love Anthrax, Among the Living. I remember buying the cassette, and I love Fistful as well. Those 2 albums are awesome. I like Neil Turbin on the first album. It's pretty cool. Bonded by Blood by Exodus. One of my honorable mentions. I really like Razor. So Violent Restitution was another album, but I like Evil Invaders. I mean, Malicious Intent. There's some great albums there. And Sodom, Agent Orange was like a really, really great album. But same thing, I just couldn't bump anybody off for that. And then Tanker, Chemical Invasion. That's an amazing album. And we should have done top 50. We should have let this go an hour and a half. We do top 50 and we just keep going. That's what I think we should have done.
And Ken, did you have any other ones that maybe weren't mentioned or anything?
Dark Angels, Darkness Descends. That's a really good album. I like it a lot. I hum and hawed about having it on the list. Also, I would have put Practice What You Preach as well, because that's probably the other Testament album that I really like. I'm like yourself. It's the first album I heard from Testament was actually Practice What You Preach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bit of a more of a commercial sound because they slowed the style down, but I like that album quite a bit. Tankard as well. That's always a really good choice for a thrash band. Of course, Creator's Pleasure to Kill. I would want that on my list, but I just couldn't seem to find a spot for it.
Well, it does tell you like how big thrash got when we're only talking about 7 years of albums, and we have so many. Like, we could have both easily, or 3 of us could have easily had a top 20
easily.
And we would have still had some groups that were a little different because I didn't have like Violence or Dark Angel or a few that you mentioned, and Creator. I didn't have Creator or whatever.
Well, even Forbidden. Forbidden wasn't even mentioned.
Yes.
They're a great band too.
So there's so much. So this year, like Kill 'Em All and then Show No Mercy and the Exciter album really did open the doors for so much thrash. And there was even groups that I thought, are they thrash or not? Like, because I even asked you guys, I can't remember if this would be thrash or not. Because Metallica toured on this album with Raven, and Raven they had an album because they did the All For, what was it called? I forget now what the tour was called. The album was called All For One, but it was called Kill 'Em All for One tour. They toured together with Metallica. So I thought, I don't think Raven was thrash. It was kind of weird that they toured together, but of course there wasn't any other thrash bands except Slayer and Exciter to tour with at that time. So is anybody, here we can talk about, you mentioned, Jim, about new Metallica and stuff like that, but so you're not a fan, obviously, too much of the newer stuff.
I gave it, like, if I was to review, I wouldn't review the new Metallica album because I have too much respect for Metallica that I wouldn't want to give them an under 8. And in good conscience, I just can't. the nice part of me would give them a 7, but it's like a 5. I mean, and I don't want to insult anybody. I tried. I bought the album. I think I've got 2 copies of it, just because, like, I buy all Metallica albums regardless, because I want to complete my catalog and that. But you know, this album came out. Nobody knew it was really coming out. Boom! It just came out. Then they released the tour like a couple days later after they released Lux Eterna. I tried so hard, and when I'm trying to make myself like an album, I think that at that point I really don't like the album. So it really bothers me that I have to say this. I thought the album had about 4 or 5 really good songs that I could get into, but then it was too long. I found it was maybe over bloated. I like shorter albums. I like not necessarily shorter songs. I like albums with no more than maybe 9 or 10. And if you're gonna go into an extra version of it, let's throw some live tracks on there. You know, this would have been better as a 10 song album, and throw 2 maybe never released live recordings on it from whatever you wanted, just to give it that bonus. And I think it would have been a lot better. But in saying that too, I mean, the Black Album, they kind of, the Black Album came out, it was great. I obviously love Metallica, but I found they went a little too mainstream, and as being that I like them being a little more underground, even though like after Master and Puppets, they blew up, but they still didn't have videos. Well, they had, when they did One and that, and they only had the one video. And I like that. I like that sort of feel that this was special for us thrash metalheads who really liked it. And then, I think if they had released maybe Death Magnetic, something similar to that, instead of going into the Load, and I'm not trashing Load. Load has a couple of good, okay songs on it, but I remember buying a Load and driving in my car and thinking it was like a Ford Escort back then. And I'm thinking, what the hell is this? And I'm just confused. If they would have came out with maybe Death Magnetic after that, I probably would have funneled a bit easier for me. But I still buy all their albums, and I do listen to them, but I gotta admit the latest album was a little bit of a disappointment for me.
And Ken, what about you? Do you listen to the new album much?
Yeah, I have it. I'm like Jim. I buy all Metallica's albums when they come out. So the last 3 albums are a mixed bag. There are things I like about all 3 of the last albums that they've done. But I agree, Jim. I think the trouble with Metallica is that they have very like lofty ambitions, and I wish they would just pull back a bit and just give us a short song that's quick and right to the point. Like Lux Eterna, I like the song. If there were more songs like that on the album, I would like it more. But this over bloated, like we gotta cram all these musical ideas into a song. That's not Metallica. They never used to be that kind of band, and now that's what they've morphed into, which is fine. And I don't mind the new stuff. It's okay, but it's not gonna knock my socks off for any reason. Death Magnetic, same thing. Like it has a couple of really good songs that I don't mind. Even Hardwired, the opening song, I love the opening song. It's so great, and I'm like, why don't they have more songs like this on the album? I just wish they'd pull back. They remind me of Iron Maiden a bit, because Maiden's the same. They just these over bloated long 8, 9, 10-minute songs. I'm like, why do you need them? I don't know. That's just my little beef about Metallica. I mean, I still dig their stuff, but I just wish they'd pull back on the reins a little bit. But they don't. It's not like they have a producer now, because they do their own shit. They don't need a producer. They just do what they want to do. They're bigger than life now. They don't have a record label. They got their own record label. They don't need to hire a producer. They just basically need someone there just to kind of like flip the knobs, record the music, and then away they go. And that's Metallica.
Yeah, it's funny too, just to kind of interject, I agree. And Lux Eterna came out on the same day Scorched by Overkill came out. And I mean, I gotta be honest, I listened to Scorched from Overkill, blew my mind, and I'm like, this is what I want. And when, on chat groups and whatever, if I say, there's a lot of hate out there for people who are purists, where they say, well, you're old, you like old Metallica. And I don't want them to go back and redo Kill 'Em All. What I want them to do is just focus and get that essence back of what made them so special on the first 4, even 5 albums. And that's what I want as a fan. And it sounds, Kenneth, same thing. I agree. Like all those 3 albums, they had enough good material on all 3 to make one slamming album, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Tom.
Yeah.
100% I agree with you.
And yeah, and I also agreed that Lux Eterna, did love that song when I first heard it, and I would play it in my car over and over again because I didn't really like many of the other songs that well on it. But that song, yeah, if they would have had 10 Lux Eternas on it, that'd be a great album.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm not gonna. One of the problems I think with Metallica is that they have Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets, and they can't do that again. So like say we had no Metallica albums and this Metallica album came out and Lux Eterna is the first time we ever heard Metallica, we might be more excited and we might take the album in better and think, oh, this is a great album. But since we have all this other stuff to compare it to, it doesn't compare to it. So, you know, then we don't really like it that much. But that's the same with, like you say, Iron Maiden. Like maybe if Iron Maiden didn't have whatever, how many albums they had, and then they released that album, Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, maybe people would like it better because they didn't have all these Number of the Beast or Power Slave to compare it to. But that's life and music, right?
Totally.
Anyway, so I think that was a good show. I like the top 10 list. That was interesting and hard, and well, it's not my fault. Ken said he wanted to do that. I just kind of put it out there, and it's really
I just thought it made more sense, Blake. I figured if we're talking about the Thrash engine, why not just do albums that came afterwards just to compare like Metallica to what we see in genre, right?
Yes, it was good.
Like you said, a lot of good shit come out.
I'm sure if we did the 1983, just did 1983, probably, I don't know, for me, probably the 3, like probably Metallica, Slayer, and Exciter probably would have been at the top of my list. I'd have to go back and see what else came out in 83 now.
Not a lot of Thrash.
I know A Piece of Mind, I guess, came out in 83. So that was high up there too, I guess. But anyway, it was a good show. Thanks, guys, for joining me.
No problem.
Thanks a lot. Happy to take part. So much fun.
Okay, and again, check us out on our website, www.themetalpit.org. And thanks for listening, and see you next week. Goodbye.